Hey guys, Philosopher here, and today I'm talking about the top war offense teams for the month of July 2021. We've actually had a pretty stable meta over the past month. Some big changes, though, obviously at the top, and so let's get right to it. As always, this war offense tier list that I'm showing you is linked below in the description. It's also on my Discord. I try to keep it fairly updated. So let's just go right now to the first team on our list. And it's not going to surprise you that the top team on our list is Infinity Watch. In fact, Infinity Watch has totally transformed the meta at the very top end of war. So essentially now there's almost a rock, paper, scissors element to war at high levels now. Everybody is going to have Infinity Watch, and even if you don't have, for example, a full 5-person team, if you haven't unlocked Adam Warlock, you're going to have, let's say, 4 members, and those 4 members, plus a 5th often can be good enough to, beat a full Infinity Watch team. And so the question is going to be, is your opponent running Infinity Watch on defense? Because if your opponent's running Infinity Watch on defense, the only reasonable, reliable counter is going to be Infinity Watch on offense. So really there's this element where, Infinity Watch counters Heroes for Hire very well. It also, though, is the only counter to Infinity Watch. And so if you put your other units that could counter Heroes for Hire on defense, you're betting that the other side doesn't have Infinity Watch on defense, because if they have Infinity Watch on defense and everybody on their team has Heroes for Hire, you could be in a situation where you have trouble clearing the other side. So there's a thing where if both sides put Infinity Watch on defense, neither side's going to clear. If one side puts it on defense and the other one does not, the side that puts it on offense is going to have an advantage because they can punch up. So, generally speaking, the safer approach is to put it on offense, but that's going to depend on whether you're punching up or punching down, your level of war and the size of your teams and things like that. But definitely, no question, the top team, it really beats everything. It really doesn't have a natural counter in war. It's even more so than Black Order was in its early days, where Black Order was kind of just countered by Black Order. It's similar, but I'd say even more so. The gap between them and the next team is very, very significant. All right, and now let's go to the next team on our list. And I've kept this in the top tier because this is the only other team that counters Heroes for Hire, and that is your Heroes for Hire counter. So it says Black Bolt plus Silver Surfer plus Kestrel, and then I've got, some blanks there for what the last character on the team is going to be. Or the last couple characters on the team are going to be. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to have Kestrel on the team for sure. You're going to have Silver Surfer on the team for sure. You're also going to have Black Bolt on the team for sure. And so then the question is just, who else is going to be on that team? So just to be clear, Silver Surfer's ultimate is going to remove charges generally from Colleen Wing. You may need him as a skirmisher for a level 5 skirmisher for the focus. But in any event, then Kestrel with her ultimate can also prevent revives, but she can usually take out that Colleen Wing. Otherwise, you also have Black Bolt also preventing revives, because characters killed by Black Bolt can't be revived. And so people use sometimes Emma Frost in this team, sometimes they use Yo-Yo, Fury, Crystal. There are some different variations here, but the bottom line is this is the only team other than Infinity Watch that counters Heroes for Hire. And really, Heroes for Hire and Infinity Watch are kind of on their own tier when it comes to Alliance War meta planning. The rest of the teams can all be dealt with in a variety of ways. But these teams on their own have very few counters. And if you don't have answers, let's say you put your Infinity Watch and some of these counter characters like Kestrel on defense, you could be in a situation where you just have no answer for some of the enemy teams. All right, so now we're going to go down to the next tier. And, the next tier of characters here, of teams here, are very, very lower because they just don't counter Infinity Watch. They don't counter Heroes for Hire. So they're just for all the other teams. And so there's almost a clear delineation with tiers. And that first team there is what I'll call the Kestrel Speed Team. I did a video called The Art of War. I'll link it below, that talked about that team and how it was important in a particular Alliance War a month or two ago. But it was definitely until Heroes for Hire came out, it was where you wanted to use Kestrel. And now, if you're in a situation where, for example, you have Infinity Watch on offense, the enemy also has Infinity Watch on offense, you can use your Infinity Watch against Heroes for Hire, and that frees up Kestrel to be part of this team. And essentially the way that this team works is that Kestrel has this out-of-turn attack. If during an ally turn, if an enemy with defense down is attacked, she attacks the most injured enemy for 400% damage. And so essentially what you do is you bring characters like Nick Fury and Ultron, and they're going to bring their summons. And those summons are going to use their basics, including the Ultron bots. So you're going to use their basics to ping characters with defense down. And then you bring characters like Namor and Falcon and so forth to generate additional speed or a speed advantage. Namor is going to reduce the enemy speed bar by 50%. And Falcon's special is going to give speed bar to your team. And that gives you the time to basically ping everyone down with Kestrel before they move. Very good against teams like Brotherhood, Doom, or Uncanny Doom. And really can beat a lot of different teams. Very, very strong team, but obviously not going to beat Heroes for Hire, not going to beat Infinity Watch. All right, and now that takes us to the next team on our list, and that's Shadowland. You know, it's interesting, Shadowland, it wasn't that long ago when Shadowland was just essentially the top dog in Alliance War. It didn't last all that long, though. You know, this is a good team that really can do a lot of things well. If you're facing Heroes for Hire that are smaller, then they can be used as a counter, but they really, we're talking smaller Heroes for Hire. My list is based on my experiences in the level of war I'm at. So I'm in a Diamond Alliance. I'm the war captain there, and I'm, facing generally Heroes for Hire teams that are in the 600K, 700K range. And those teams are not going to be beaten by Shadowland, but they're good enough to beat smaller smaller Heroes for Hire. They're also just can beat a lot of different teams. This is probably the strongest, synergy team, all-around synergy team other than Infinity Watch. And it's a very good team that can be used against a whole variety of counters. I think of it like the X-Force of 2021. X-Force was fantastic when they first came out. They've been power crept, but this team is really still very, very good. All right. And now the next team on my list is X Factor plus a fifth. And you might be thinking, how the heck can this team be above Black Order? Well, here's the thing. Right now, the meta really revolves around Infinity Watch and Heroes for Hire. Then a secondary consideration is, what is your enemy running for Doom, right? So are they running Brotherhood Doom or Uncanny Doom? At high levels, that's generally what's run. I know I've gotten a lot of comments from people saying at their level of war that's silly to them, but it's really by far the most common thing you see at higher levels because that prevents Symbiotes or Shadowland from easily defeating the Doom team. And against those teams, those Brotherhood teams or Uncanny Doom teams, X Factor can, or at least against Brotherhood Doom, I should say, with, let's say, Rhino as the fifth, X Factor can really get the job done. Now, because you just place Rhino in between Longshot and Shatterstar, and then when the blind comes, they get cleansed, or Rhino can use a special to cleanse those two characters. Also, of course, this team beats a lot of other stuff. You could pair them with Squirrel Girl or Namor or something else to beat Marauders or Sinister Six, a lot of other teams as well. So I think this team, because they have the ability to beat a team like Brotherhood Doom, I'm putting them a little higher. That's something that, Shadowland does not do as reliably. Shadowland can beat, whether it's Brotherhood Doom or Uncanny Doom, but it's a very tricky fight, and it can go south. This can also be a tricky fight, but less so. It's a little bit more reliable. And, of course, it beats, they beat a lot of other teams like Marauders. All right. Next on our list is a team that's fallen a little bit, and that is Black Order. I know I'm going to get some angry messages and posts on the Discord like, oh my God, my Black Order are the best and this and that. Look, they're still a fantastic team. I've obviously invested a lot in my Black Order team, but they have been power crept over this past year. I think they're clearly worse than Shadowland in terms of how useful they are. They don't counter a lot of Doom teams. They don't counter some other teams that you're going to see at the very high level. They're not realistically going to be your best counter to an Uncanny Doom or Brotherhood Doom or something like that. In fact, increasingly I'm starting to see Black Order start to creep up on defense in certain alliance wars at our level. So I think they're a good team, but they're not a necessary team. They beat a lot of stuff. They beat a little tiny smidge less than Shadowland. And they're not really necessary to beat anything. So I think they're still a very strong team, still a top-tier team, but they're definitely not a solution to any of the teams that are really giving you trouble, like Affinity Watch or Heroes for Hire or, let's say, Brotherhood or Uncanny Doom. All right, let's get to the next team on our list, and that is Skillitary. So Skillitary, interesting team. This is a team that... because they were bad before their rework was underestimated by many, but it's still a very strong team. You'll notice the caveat there. You need the T4s. You want to have Black Widow on the team and a big Punisher. So, first of all, this team really doesn't come together unless it has a whole slew of T4s. I do have a T4 guide to Skill Military, which I'll link below, and it's also on my Discord as well. But essentially... that is what makes the team go. So if you don't have at least the first several T4s on that infographic, don't bother using this team. But if you do, if you have those and you put Black Widow in the team in particular, it's a very, very good counter to mercenaries and a number of other teams, particularly teams that rely on buffs. A very strong team. Still keep Killmonger with your mercs. You absolutely want to have Merc Soldier on the team. So the right composition is Black Widow, Punisher, Red Guardian, Yelena, Merc Soldier. You also really want to have a big Punisher because he can delete somebody on turn one because his ultimate has essentially 2 attacks, and then he'll have a 3rd attack as a striker. All right. Next team on the list is the Axemen. This is a team that I think is probably a little overrated. It's very, very good in mutant raids in Doom. It could be very useful there. It's certainly an essential team from that perspective. But I got to put this in like a Symbiotes camp. I mean, it's a little better than Symbiotes in the sense that I think the team is just newer, so it's not as power crap. But just like Symbiotes are kind of a bio rating team, city team, it's not as the X-Men are a mutant rating team, and that's what they do. They are good in war. They have uses in war, but they're kind of a team you're looking for a use for, and they generally are best when the enemy has a summon. So they are, very good against a team like Sinister Six. They can be good against certain Doom compositions that aren't, let's say, Uncanny or Brotherhood Doom. I mean, those are less. They can't be a reliable counter there. But it's a good team. It could be a lot of older stuff. It could be a variety of different teams. Still useful in war, but it's towards the bottom of this tier. All right, now the next team is a team that I used to get lots of messages about from people back in the day. So back, in prior metas, I used to get a lot of people asking me, well, I use my Hela and Zemo and Red Skull and all these characters together, and that team really punches up big on Marauders. And yes, it does, because Hela has that ultimate that could spread debuffs, spread 4 negative effects. And so if you use your Zemo, for example, to put ability block, and then you spread it with Hela, then he applies ability block there. That could be a very powerful combination. Of course, she's can spread other negative effects as well. It's a very good team. Now, in the past, I didn't even have this team on my list because I thought it was a mistake to use it, because at the time you needed Hela and Zemo to anchor their own teams. But since we now have more characters, and they have not yet, I mean, they may be in some new changes in the future, increasing the defense slots, we're getting more teams and more characters and fewer slots that we need them in, so we can afford to combine Hela and Zemo and Hydra Grenadier and Red Skull on their own team. Generally, people run Loki as the 5th, but you could run another character like a Hydra minion or something like that as the 5th as well. Depending on who you take out, and that team could take out Marauders and a variety of other things. I know at lower levels like Platinum 1, people run things like Kestrel Shield. They could be used against them and so forth. All right. Now, let's go to the next tier. And tier 3 we have at the top is Symbiotes. Symbiotes actually, for a period of time, looked like they actually were on the rise, because what happened was, when people were first unlocking Doom, they were throwing them on slower teams like Marauders or Fantastic Four, or with I saw people who used to throw them with Guardians and so forth. And they're just a team that can easily beat a Doom team as long as the team is slow. If the team doesn't do something to block them or punish them in some way, the Symbiotes can just go and they just keep killing the Doom bots, and they keep getting turn meter from getting the Doom bots to low health, and then they can just ability block Doom with Venom and so forth. So they're very useful if your opponents run silly Doom teams that are slow. But if you start seeing, at least at my level, we start seeing things, if everyone's running, let's say, Brotherhood Doom, where they just Magneto blinds everyone on turn 1, which is a hard counter to Symbiotes, or Uncanny Doom, where these guys can't get past Colossus, then they're not super useful. Once you're at a level where everyone's running that stuff, people tend to throw these Symbiotes on defense, or you just use them to clean up or against lower end teams, power creep teams, and so forth. So not what they once were. And that's why they're at tier 3. All right, let's go to the rest of tier 3. And we have X-Force here at tier 3. And I will just say that, X-Force is a team that used to be at the very top. And I know I still get people telling me how amazing their X-Force is and whatever. They're more of a cleanup team now at my level of war. Because there's just, if everybody's got the higher meta teams, this team just isn't as strong, and it doesn't do quite as well. It gets to do power creep teams. Still a useful team, but they're all around good on Alliance War offense, but they're not what they once were. But if you do build it, you definitely want a big Negasonic, big X-23. Don't be a noob and build a huge Deadpool. Okay. Next, instead, okay, if you want to keep Deadpool as the highest damage, it really limits the team. All right, now we'll go to, this is a team that I had spent a lot of time, pumping up back in its day, and that's Hydra 3.0. So Hydra 3.0, that's Baron, Zemo, Red Skull, Grenadier. Usually you'd have Winter Soldier, and then you'd have a pre-taunting character like Drax or Red Guardian. At the time, that was the only real counter to Mercs. So mercenaries scale really, really, really well at high levels. So if you're facing 600k mercenary teams, 700k mercenary teams, they scale extremely well. And before Skillitary were reworked, you really had no answer other than Black Order at that level. And so, Hydra 3.0 was the response. And nowadays, by the way, Ultimus Mercs are making a little bit of a comeback. Those are being used more versus the Skillitary. And so, sometimes Hydra 3.0 are still useful. What I will say is the reason this works, you have to have Grenadier as the highest damage. And that is very easily possible because not only does Grenadier have a naturally high damage stat, so there you can see mine is 23k. Here it's almost as high as Zemo, even though he's gear 14 instead of 15. And then if you see Red Skull gives additional 10% damage to Hydra minion allies. That's the only one to count, not anything else from his passive, because that doesn't come into play until his turn. But that 10% does count and puts Grenadier above Zemo. So you basically want to have Grenadier be the highest damage. Taskmaster will taunt Grenadier, and the mercenaries will waste all their energy fighting Grenadier, and Red Skull will keep resing him. That's how that team works. Okay, let's get going and get right back to the list. Doc Ock Sinister 6, you're starting to see this a little bit more on offense now that sometimes you're seeing Black Order there. They do punch up big against Black Order. You have to time the flip properly. You also want to use the Mysterio special against Cole so that he gets, I think it's blinded and ability blocked and so forth. Brotherhood 2.0, this may drop a tier. I mean, this used to be super useful when you would see, not only against teams like PIM and and stuff. They are good against symbiotes, but unless the enemy's got symbiotes on defense, they're not nearly as useful because stuff like PIM and Technerva and all that, I mean, those are just garbage teams that you usually can clean up with X-Force or something else. Uncanny X-Men with Ultron and Beast. Usually you're going to want to, or Ultron or Beast, you generally want to have Beast in X-Men. All people have used Ultron as a substitute. This is essentially if your roster's at a spot where you're desperately needing Uncanny X-Men on offense, this is a way of trying to, get back some of what you lost with Beast, so you kind of have X-Tron. It's okay. This is really kind of a crutch if your roster's not in a good spot, but it may be useful to some of you. They're okay because they can counter some mercs at some level. Then you have these two teams here. Hella Natural, I've done videos on this. This is where you take Elsa off of Supernatural, put Hella on. She has a lot of synergy with that team, but not as useful now that Black Widow has moved off of Wave 1. So very limited. Still could be used against Sinister Six. It could be used against the OG Wave 1 team, but less useful than it used to be. Fantastic Four plus Ultron still has value against teams like Uncanny if they're on defense, but not a reliable counter against stuff like Marauders, even much less anything bigger. So these two teams though definitely have some use. They are used at my level of war. Then we get to stuff that we just don't use really at all at my level. Stuff like Inhumans, Uncanny X-Men without Beast. I mean, this is just a team that sits on the bench if it's not on defense. Zemo, Hydra without Red Skull. Basically, if you're using Red Skull on defense, this team really just counters Red Skull for the most part. Just doesn't counter a lot of other teams, or Shield or something like that. Old school Shield Coulson. Supernatural is really not very good without Hell on the team. You need a lot of T4s in the team too. Fantastic Four without Ultron. Super power crept at this point. Doesn't do much. Power armor, similar. All these teams are just teams that you really shouldn't be using much in war. If they're being used at your level of war, I have kept them on the rankings, but these are teams that have really fallen out of the meta entirely. All right, guys, if you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel. If you have questions, post them below, or just go to our Discord. Lots of great Alliance War discussions there. And also check out our Twitch stream. I stream most weeknights, and that is linked below as well.